Welcome to Nom Watch Review, part of Nom Talk Network. On this show, we review the latest film drop or a throwback, celebrating a milestone while eating and drinking our favorite snacks. My name is Alex, or Alejandro. I'll be hosting today as I was really hungry, forgive me, guys, as I get a partially eaten pizza here because I got a lot of pepperoni pizza that I'm hyped up about. Along with a little bit of soda and bubbly. So I have to have that wide discussion here. I have two amazing guests with me. I'm so hyped because I'm slightly spoiled. I had you guys earlier. I'm going to introduce you guys here. Say hello, Bill. What are you having with us today?
Howdy there. I'm doing well. Actually, I went out. I went to five-star dining. I had the very best of McDonald's earlier, but so topping it off with a Coke Zero. So we're going luxury style.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I have to ask you, what do you usually get at McDonald's?
McChicken, no lettuce, or McDouble.
I like it. Rob, let me introduce you, my friend. Are you having anything with us today?
Yes, beef stew for dinner, leftovers. Finishing night off with some good old fashioned liquid death water
Liquid
and some good little cheese sticks. Good little snack.
Excellent. Snack that smiles back. Cheese sticks. Oh wait, that's wrong. That's not the right thing. But I tried.
It works. It works.
Well, once again, thank you guys for joining me. I'm so hyped because I know we went nonstop and talking about Lost Boys. So now I get to have you guys today for Total Recall 1990 and Total Recall 2012. Now, Total Recall 1990 is the one with the milestone, but we wanted to go ahead and add a little spice to it tonight in regards to comparing Total Recall 2012. We will be doing some pros and cons for both, if possible, mainly just discussing the two. So let's see how that goes. First of all, I want to start off with Rob. A question for you, Rob. How and when were you introduced to this film, and what was the feeling you got for the 1990 version?
1990 version is a staple in my household, and here's why. You have Arnold at what is arguably his peak. This is the best of Arnold. We get action Arnold, we get quippy Arnold, we get superstar Arnold, we get kindergarten cop Arnold, we get all these faces of Arnold that we've seen separately and individually going, wow, he's surprisingly got a little bit of rage in him. Who would have thought it? And we see Total Recall and we're like, oh snap, he's really that good actually. Surprisingly, the Austrian dude knows how to hang. But no, it's that movie's been around literally since I've been alive. That's just been a staple.
Excellent. Bill, how about yourself? From 1990, when you introduced it, how's the feeling when you saw this film?
This one I remember this one actually fairly well. Again, it was working in the movie theaters at the time when it came out, so was watching it when it first hit. It was fun. It was enjoyable. I mean, again, we'll touch on later on those iconic scenes that really stick out in the mind. So that's I remember enjoying it and having fun. I don't know if I'd go as far with it being my favorite on the Schwarzenegger fronts, because a couple years earlier, The Running Man for me was actually a better
Running Man
for him, just because it gave him a little bit more to sink teeth into. But if I'm going to have to go this versus Kindergarten Cop, yeah, totally.
Who is your daddy and what does he do? Excellent. You know what, guys? I'm gonna be slightly ashamed to tell you how I was introduced to this film. But my first Arnold Schwarzenegger film for me, because I saw this film a little late compared to when it came out, it was Terminator. I had a big old crying scene with him in it too. I was like, oh no, Terminator 2 is my main thing. But anyway, fast forward a little bit, I get introduced to Total Recall because, oh my God, my parents are gonna kill me. So basically, I think maybe like barely 10 years old. And I was hanging out with my friends and we were playing our Star Wars, G.I. Joe stuff, running up and downstairs. And this guy, one of the kids say, oh, you remember that scene? And they all started giggling. And I was like, what are you guys talking about? And one of the kids go, do you want to see a movie where there's a woman with 3 boobies? And I was like, what? So I was like, let's go. So we went downstairs into the basement.
Oh, every kid is
snacks over there. And like
Recall.
the Total Recall thing comes up, and the movie comes up, and like all this action started happening, and I totally forgot there was supposed to be like a 3 boobie woman scene, and I was like, oh my God, this is so great. So to say my initial reaction with the film, it was pretty decent. It was great because I know we're going to go further into it, but it was kind of a taboo thing with me. We were introduced to it. So to me, I was aware who of Arnold Schwarzenegger was, and it was cool seeing him doing a different role other than a robot. So that being said, let's go ahead. I want to start off in the beginning of this film, coming into it, just because there's no chill, in my opinion, when it came to Total Recall. It started off right off the bat. So I want to go ahead and start off with you, Bill. An initial beginning of the story, we see coming into what I would say is Arnold's well, dream, so to speak, in the situation here. In regards to the pace and how it starts, how did you feel about it?
Um, it's always interesting whenever they have Schwarzenegger in as the family man. He's hanging out, average guy, just happened to look like he's built like a brick shit house.
Oh my God! Thank God someone touched on that. Thank God you got to it before me.
Because it's kind of like that. Always a little bug. Okay, but we'll tell him family dad. Okay, great. And his frustration with job. So his plight, is kind of easy to sink into. Everyone kind of gets that whole thing. It's stuck in the daily grind, and we can't really afford a vacation. But here we can plant one into your head. That sounds fine. So that setup is fine. The pacing itself, especially when the first time you're seeing it, it's kind of like, just where is this shit going? Where are we going? I saw in the trailer there's some shit about Mars. When are we getting on to that business? And so there's a little bit of excited seeing how it's all going to tie in. Later times it's kind of like, man, let's get to the good part.
Yeah, so speed up. Yeah.
Yeah.
See that is I can't agree more, and I'll touch base after it. Rob, yourself, the pacing, bud. We know how it immediately comes in. As you can tell, they're on Mars. We are like, what the hell is going on? I have to ask you, what is your opinion on the pacing, the starting of the film?
This movie has the kookiest pacing ever. The best way I can describe the pacing of this movie is the same way I can describe it for Starship Troopers. It's either all go or it's all stop. There is no like, okay, let's inch along. No, it is either.
Would you like to know more?
Exactly. Would you like to know more? Or there is no information in the scene at all. And thank you, Bill, for touching on Schwarzenegger's side, because I love the fact that his best friend is freaking basically Hank Hill from King of the Hill. And you got freaking Hercules just ended there. Oh, yeah, have you heard of this thing called the recall? Like, bro, I think you're in the wrong fucking profession. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
But
you're good.
You're in the wrong profession, dude. Like, come on. What the hell? Like, it's, oh, God, I love it.
No, I have to agree with you guys. I mean, in regards to the pacing on this, it's insane. It's a full throttle or no throttle at all. I mean, considering the fact that I will say that it kind of threw me off a little bit in regards to, because this is my first introduction to a practical effect, seeing something that large, coming into his, bad Mr. Dream, where his eyes are sucked out of the, sockets of this, helmet and so forth as well. So the beginning, the pacing is just insane, which leads me to the comparison to the 2012 version. So to me, I'm going to start off with this a little bit, because like now you have what we say, they focus on Mars. I think the 1990 version focuses concept of space travel. Even though we're talking about Total Recall, it seems like that's their next jump. They want, and obviously space travel is possible. 2012, they kind of seem to keep it homeward bound. So it seems in a sense to me that the introduction, the pacing, a little slower, but I will say it even seems like the world's different. You have something that now focuses. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to tap on what you said. It's focused in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that concept of there, you have I mean, yes, space travel exists, but they look at the concept of going through the Earth's core immediately to two different colonies that only exist in this world. Now, my question is this here. Now, at the time, maybe because we weren't too expecting of movies back in the 90s. I mean, to me, like both you guys made an excellent point. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger. How can you do that? I mean, the only thing that made sense to me, what he was doing when he was making his protein smoothie, and the fact that his hand covers that whole freaking little hand. That one as an adult, like I can do this, and like his little pinky fingers, like whoa, he's making this little tiny thing, blueberries and protein powder and milk, and that's like the only thing he seems natural in doing. Now, comparing to, I would say, the 2012 version here, we actually have, you have Colin Farrell. To me, I think he's a little bit more believable in his factor role. Bill, what would you compare it to in the beginning and believability? Because you did mention before with Arnold trying to believe that he's a family man.
Okay, let's be. Actually, you made the great point on it. Is when the film came out, and let's face it, most remakes these days, especially in the film genre, especially if it's old, old favorites, it is rare that they actually turn out to be anything other than a hot mess. And so this is one I actually didn't go to see in the theaters. It's kind of like when it was finally on, on HBO or
Mm-hmm.
Netflix, wherever it was on. It's like, okay, fine, we'll watch this. Watch it. It's like, this is actually really good. Really enjoyed it. I was shocked. And I don't mind shows taking different takes on the original material because again, Total Recall, 90 itself wasn't an original film or original story, right? It's based off the Philip K. Dick story, and so you're dealing with kind of variations on a theme. And don't forget, even before 2012, there was a TV series in 1999
Yes.
that the Canadians wouldn't did. So there's a lot of maple syrup involved.
I had
So
no idea.
but there's
It
one
was
in
very
22
sticky.
episode season of the
What
thing.
was it called? It was a Total
Total
Recall.
Recall.
I have to look that up. That's that. Oh my
Actually, I think it
god.
was called like Total Recall 2070 or something. It had a year date with it as well.
Yeah, it was
But
supposed to
basically,
be
again,
like different, a separate story, but within like that Total Recall universe.
yeah. And don't forget, even before this, there was a sequel planned for Total Recall Once Upon a Time based
Yep.
on another Dick story, and that was Minority Report, which then got redone into just the standalone Minority Report rather than tying it into the same universe. Again, the Dick novels are,
Uh-huh.
as I recall, I'm remembering it right, are not tied in. Just the studio went, well, we got rights to Dick novels. Let's put these together, but they ended up not. But the point is, they were trying to continue on with this universe in one way or the other.
Mhm.
And when 12 came along, it didn't try to redo the original. It just kind of was like, all right, original material, let's take it and do our own spin. And so I actually really enjoyed it. I find it a perfectly serviceable little thriller.
Heck yeah. I mean that's it, it's funny, and I'll continue, but I want to ricochet to Rob over here. Same with your opinion on the 2012 version, 1990 version in the beginning, Colin Farrell with Arnold Schwarzenegger. How would you do in comparison, Rob?
See, on the one hand, Colin Farrell's intro, that intro is fantastic. I think it's way better. I think it better establishes a story, well establishes what kind of journey me as a viewer is about to go on while experiencing this film. Now, going to the 1990, it doesn't necessarily do that. However, for its time, is a masterpiece in terms of that anticipation build of like what's going on, what's happening. It's very much a piece of its time. It's very much a you couldn't really do a 1990s Total Recall intro nowadays. Nowadays, critics will rip you apart like, what the hell is this? The first 5 minutes, I have no idea what the hell is going on within the first 5 minutes. What the hell is this piece of garbage? But 1990, everyone's like, ooh, this is weird. This is mysterious. This is what the hell's going on. Oh, I want to know more. And it's fascinating. They're both great, or they're both good, just in their own ways.
Right on. Right. See that, and that's the thing too as well. I mean, part of me as I was listening to both of you, part of me is like, I hear a little word in the back of my head. Blumhouse. I kind of want like Blumhouse, do a version of this, please. And I know, right?
I
It's gonna
won't.
be like
No,
Renee.
no. First, they need to do Running Man, then they can do Total Recall.
Okay, I agree with you that. In that regard, definitely, definitely. Now, before I get too sidetracked here, so I have to make mention coming into along with the supporting actors and actresses that are actually in this film as well. So we have Arnold Schwarzenegger who plays Dennis Quaid, Colin Farrell who plays Dennis Quaid as well. Now, in regards to the wife, I have to mention this because I'm not going to go ahead and like make fun of Rachel was it Takata? Now the thing about with this actress, she was believable in some scenes, but in others, I felt in the 1990 version they were too coursed. It felt like she was trying hard, and then to me, at the same time, though, when we find out shortly, like minutes later, that she's an agent, it kind of makes sense because in a sense this was a cluster and it happened immediately. And so to me, I was trying to make up my mind, okay, maybe she's supposed to be scared. This is really an awkward situation. This wasn't supposed to happen in the first place. Everything went to foobar in this whole situation. And considering the start off and the beginning, and I don't want to skip over too much, but we're talking about, because Rob, you mentioned it earlier, who Arnold's best friend was. He looked like a good fella that was in the construction business. That's essentially
Yeah,
what
no,
he was.
it was so off-putting. Versus when we look at 2012, it's
Mhm.
much more appropriate. Like, oh, okay, this
Well,
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. When you actually have that transition of like who the character is, and then getting in that we are in 2020 versions, because I do not want to forget. This guy has a decent amount of sci-fi attributes when it comes to his list here.
Oh
But
yeah.
looking at yeah, so coming into this character type, I mean, to me, I feel that his friend in 2012 would be a little bit more, I would say, methodic in his planning. To me, it was like, all right, they are coworkers, all right, they're friends. But to me, it just seemed that their interactions seemed more real. And then if you think about 2012 version, they kept them longer in it. Not till I don't want to spoil anything later because we will compare a scene to what they actually did from 1990 to 2012. But in the first one, 1990, they kill his friend off in the first 20 minutes. In Total Recall 2012, his best friend's with him like to the first hour, almost towards the end of the film. So to me, I will say the pacing is similar. Rob, you are correct in regards to they both have their faults, but their premises. Bill, you mentioned it earlier, really focusing the fact that this was supposed to be a remake, but it didn't feel like a remake, and I couldn't agree with you more.
I
I
think
felt
it
like,
needs its own category. I think it needs to be a relaunch because it's
yeah,
not
yeah,
necessarily because it's not like a remake would be a proper remake would be like, you know what, like the remake of Friday the 13th when they brought back Jared Padalecki and
yeah,
that they brought back the old school campgrounds.
yeah. The
Okay, like
hood,
that's
yeah, hood Jason.
proper. Yep, that's a proper. Okay, this is a remake. This is a redo. This was more of like we're gonna take our concept, but we're gonna kind of go in our own direction. This is a relaunch of this kind
Now,
of concept of story.
Now, see, on that same note, the reason why I want to transition over to this here is going into the mid story. Now we understand that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Colin Farrell have been questioning their lives. I honestly, at this point, I can relate to them. Monotonous 9 to 5. I want something different. I want something, out there. So I believe that the story of making relatable to a lot of people out there being, the working person, it made it relatable, like, all right, what's more, put me somewhere. I want that. If I can't have the real thing, then might as well be engraved in my brain, right? So now we know that Colin Farrell and Arnold Schwarzenegger are actually truly agents, secret agents that realize that they have a big secret that in one leads to a different planet, life in general, and two leads to sustaining life where they live and making things doable, right? Now, that being said, I will have to say that Kate Beckinsale sold me so much to this film. I
Oh,
did
thank God.
not expect. I love Colin Farrell. I'm such a nerd that I love his SWAT movie the most. It's ridiculous. I am in love with that man's
Yes.
acting style, what he does. Probably, I got a man crush. The point is the fact that he is, he's a great actor. I was not expecting Mrs. Underworld herself to come in and just freaking mop the floor with 30-second dialogues that kept me in there. So to me, she seemed more secret agent like or a sleeper cell compared to the
Right.
first one. But please, Bill, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, no, same sort of thing. And it's kind of like surrounding performance because the original, it all other than Three Boob Gal,
Yeah,
the entire movie hangs on Schwarzenegger, right? It's
yeah,
him and Quaid, that kind of shit, and the effects. And the first one really was a comic book movie. It was kind of drawn as a comic book. It's very almost it would fit well in like the heavy metal, universe kind of a thing. Where Recall or the 12 version, it's more like real agents. It's kind of like Mr. and Mrs. Smith with a sideways side arc. And so I, to your point, it felt like a better ensemble and what was going on, and all the characters fit together and work together. But it's kind of coming through of a more, such as it is, a realistic lens in 2012 versus he's pulling some of the size of a goose egg through his nostril. Don't worry, just go with it because it's funny. Pull. And
Yeah.
that was, because let's remember, whenever people remember Total Recall, Three Boo Girl, him blowing up and pulling the thing out of his nose. That's what people remember, period.
Yes.
Uh
now I
and
have a
then
question for you, Bill. Also,
yeah,
too. Now, on that note, in regards to oh man, I'm sorry, I had it on the tip of my tongue. It was right there because I thought it was a great question and it just disappeared. I'm so sorry. Continue. I will
oh, it's
follow up.
fine.
Didn't mean to clap
With
there either.
regards
Sorry.
to it, even it was Jessica Biel commented once about it being that it wasn't a remake, it was really a new adaptation off the original story. But she's saying that as a character that doesn't exist in the story, her character only existed in the '90 film, and other things are there as well. Because remember, Quaid isn't his name in the story; it's Quail. But Quaid comes from the '90 movie. There's other things as well.
That's
So it's
right.
kind of like somebody watched the '90s movie once,
Uh-huh.
then went back and read the book, and now about 5 years later they go and write the script, and that was the outcome for 12. But again, I liked it as just taking it as its own thing rather than sit there constantly waiting for them to do the same kind of tricks, because one of the reasons why I only gave the original one three popcorns versus where I got 3.5 to this one is the first one is fine. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's a lot of fun. You grab some friends, let's watch it. Like you said, kids of an age, three boobs. It's great. Which
Yeah.
even goes forward down to Paul when we're thinking about that movie. What are they all excited about? Three boobs. And they're like, four boobs. They're like, that's gross. See, whatever reason, it was funny. And so
Yeah.
that was fun. It's two different types of film. And so the acting and the cast for 12, yeah,
Uh-huh.
do it. Works.
Excellent. Now, Rob, I'm going to shoot a question your way that I was intending for Bill, and then it came in, but he did such a great point. Now, Bill mentioning the fact that the first one was based off comic book style, second one's more dramatic, focuses on Bill made an excellent point, Mr. and Mrs. Smith style esque noir, in my opinion. Rob, in your opinion, in regards to the first film, knowing that the premise is based off a comic book style, to me, I love shoot 'em up action movies. This is fantastic. But they started off with just slaughtering people on news cameras and everything. Like you mentioned, and Rob, you mentioned an excellent point. You earlier mentioned they compared to Starship Troopers. Do you think the first one could have used more violence, shoot, 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 or do you think less? In my opinion, and then and more on. Please continue afterwards.
I would have. The only biggest gripe I have about the original '90s Total Recall, outside of the obvious stuff, is I would have loved to have seen them gone the route of a RoboCop. To just say, screw it. We're going to make this thing and we're going to push it to the limit. And we're going to let them tell us what it's going to take to get us to R. So we're just going to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Oh, we got to remove these 4 things? Okay, fine. But don't hold the punches back. Total Recall 2012, while being more curtailed, it was more streamlined. It was more cerebral from the first frame. Once we get out of the intro and we see him waking up, and Kate Beckinsale's there. Hey, how's it going? You think it's about this? And you see her starting to dissect and go through it, and you're like, this is completely different. This isn't even in the same. We're not even playing the same sport right now. Like it changes itself so much, so it ends up working out beautifully in a way that it wasn't intended, but just happens to be, and that's why it's fantastic. Because
No, see,
anyone
I
who's
can see
like,
that.
2012 is horrible, I'm like, when's the last time you saw it? Like, it ages pretty dang well.
Yeah, that's funny you should say that too, because Bill, you mentioned it earlier. Hearing the initial remake of Total Recall, or hearing a possible remake, we always hear remakes and we're like, oh crap, let's see how it goes.
Right.
You said you watched it a little later on, and that we were surprised at how much you actually liked it. Same here. In fact, when I heard that it came out, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't give it a second thought. Even with
Yeah.
like the actors and actresses, I was going. I'm like, even they had like a Bokeem, I think, that plays his friend. To me, he's one of my favorite sci-fi. He's constantly in sci-fi films, and to me, he has a consistency to them that I enjoy, and it's kind of like a little piece to it. However, I saw this for the first time on HBO, and I was like, all right, cool, let's put him to see how it is, and I was shocked, like how much I liked it. And part of me wants to know if that ever didn't get its full like glory in the box office because of that, is because maybe a lot of nerds like us had that similar opinion, or even just your average, watcher. Your average watcher compared to nerds, we're the same
Right.
thing. But the point is that I felt like I gave it a lot of doubt in that sense. So hopefully maybe get some more love. To me, because I still feel like, and I'm digressing a little bit, but I still feel like there can be a part 2 or something in the universe that can continue on, whether it's with the Quaid family, whether it's from a jaded side of his friend. He's called Harry here, Richter in the other one, 1990. It would be interesting to see if they had like a son that they never mentioned, or something like that. I don't know, who knows. But the point is, I digress. I want to fast forward a little bit now to it, because I know we can go like a long time into comparing these. So let's fast forward. We understand who Quaid is. We understand the situation is. We get to the point where his wife and best friend had 2 ridiculously huge fighting scenes in there. In the 2012 version, to me, it seems a little bit more of fluidic design of a future. I kind of compare it to a Blade, not Blade, sorry, Blade Runner. In a sense, with its futuresque vibe to it. So I do think 2012 did a really excellent job into kind of showing a current modern future, because it's 2012, it's 2020, it's 2022, and it still seems like that can be a relevant future for us, in that regard. Now, the one thing,
the way things are going, that's more and more.
yeah, with
future.
I know, right? With the pay, it's actually being living situation. In 2012, oh my God, I'm cringing. Why'd you have to say something, Rob? Because now I'm thinking, because the form of currency that's more than anything is living space, and now, oh my God, LA and New York, Jesus Christ. Anyway, the point is, though,
man, I'm just saying.
The point is, now we are fast forward to the point where I want to show little differences. There's been a lot of fighting, a lot of blood, a lot of gore on both sides. Now, I want to ask both of you this question. Do you prefer the 1990 version or 2012 version in this particular scene? Now, in the 1990 version, we have Quaid talking to what seems to be a psychiatrist that came into a virtual reality system that's in recall and is trying to tell Quaid that he's living in a simulation, that he's crazy. What you're doing, this is your life. She loves you. What do you think's going on? And as he's trying to do this, Quaid is having doubts and so forth as well. And we see him at the point. A little bead of sweat comes down after this 5-minute intense coming in.
Right.
Pulls out a gun, boom, shoots him. Right? What the heck's going on? Well, in 2012, they took that scene, which is initially about first 45 minutes, and put it into lightest toward the hour. Now we have Quaid's friend that's not the psychiatrist, that's now in the simulation, quote unquote, trying to convince him that he's in the simulation. And once again, he dies in that similar way. Now, both scenes in their own right have pros and cons. I enjoy them, but I have to reflect this to you guys. So, Rob, question starting off with you, my friend. Did you prefer, and if you don't, if you like them both of them, please let us know. 1990 version into the psychiatrist, this is a simulation, or the 2012 version where this is I'm your best friend and this is a simulation?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me this question, but both have their places, and I hate that I keep repeating this, but they both do have their places. The 1990 version, it's just, again, classic, like just boom, you see that as a kid, and you're just, oh my, what the heck is. But that 2012 one just has some teeth on it that you're just like, oh, why am I getting like early Wachowski's Matrix vibes over this right now? And it feels so good. But if I had to pick God's Honest, I do prefer the 2012 one, just because I do prefer the way it's shot, and the cinematography of it is just so much different. And it's so well placed. It reminds me, like Bill said, of a Minority Report. You can tell the way this movie is shot. They looked at Minority Report and went, maybe some of this. Because it looks very similar. Like, if you put two and two together, like, oh, it's actually quite close.
The universe.
Yeah, no, just the look of it. Think about the tech, just the technologies. They look one and the same.
No, that's valid. And the shading color, you're right. I mean, honestly, if Bill didn't bring it up, I would have been lost his head. But no, you're right. I didn't expect it from that point in regards to, that's going to bug me. Now I want to go back and watch a few things. Bill, I want to reflect this to you, my friend. Did you prefer the 2000, and like I said, if like them both, by all means, it's perfectly okay. 1990 version with the psychiatrist questioning, or the 2012 version with his best friend questioning?
No.
You said both?
12.
Correct. 12. Gotcha.
12. And the reason is, again, psychiatrist coming in is a stranger coming in and trying to convince him of something. That's a harder sell than someone that you think is your friend, that you believe that you have connection with and stuff like that. Just like him and the wife, they're a believable pair. It works, and the rest of the people sitting around him. So he's having to break against and having his Schwarzenegger shooting his shrink. He doesn't know the person from Adam. It doesn't matter any. He's just trying to. Is the person telling me something? Get to the chopper. Versus on the other side, it's like, the one thing that Colin Farrell can always do is look emo and kind of oh my god, self-doubt. What am I
You
going to
really
do?
can't.
But it's his friend going, hey, this is what's going on, and he has to fight against that. That for me, that's more effective.
See, I have to agree with you. And it's funny that both you should say, and I don't know why. I don't know why this didn't come to mind because my mind was so focused. I'll give you my opinion just in a second here on the concept of that makes sense. You got your psych and you got your friend. Well, you're going to most likely trust your friend or question yourself in that reality,
Right.
which, maybe the writers picked up on that immediately too, as well in that regard. To me, like I said, I ended up liking them both. And for me, I guess was because it seemed and honestly, Bill, my answer was not going to be that until you brought this point 15 minutes ago. The comic book style that they had to have for the 1990 version. You think about the scenes in general, and I, I watch these movies over and over again. So you're looking at the 1990 recall version in which they're literally in his apartment, right? Is in his home, in this area where he's supposed to have his wife, and everything's condensed. And to me, it made it feel very homey. And I'm like, okay, cool. This is all right, chill. What's going on? But the fact that he had a semi-auto Uzi in his hand kind of just took away from the factor. And here we have this psychiatrist talking to him. And you know what? I have to look this up because this guy's voice was so dang familiar. Let's see here. The thing about it too, as well, is like to me, I felt like I've heard his voice all over like the Disney Channel or some form of.
Oh,
There it is.
like the
Roy
behind,
Brocksmith was Dr. Edmar. And I have to look him up here because the reason why I want to look at his voice is just iconic. Here we go. Lord, he has so many. Babylon 5, Call the Conqueror. There's a lot of things in which his voice just comes out
I
very,
was gonna
very.
say, isn't he like the sci-fi version of like Ben Stein, where it's like everyone wants his voice?
Dude, that and the fact that we're going to go into the fact that he was also in like a lot of Tales of the Crypt, coming into his voice in general, just used to tell stories. But coming into the fact that I will have to say, to me, it was the best fan factor that kind of leans me towards more the 2012 version. But it's just the scene. You're in an office, you have 150 plus people, all guns are drawn. You get to see every form of their armor, standard SWAT into the tactical force that comes in with their white two-tone. The fact that you have his friend just trying to convince him, like, hey, and I say his friend, we're full of crap. It's not his friend. We get convinced because we think it's his friend. He's a total stranger in that regard. And the thing that gets me a little bit, I have to say that I miss Michael Ironside as in the 1990 version. I wish he existed in 2012. Something about Ironside and the fact that I mean he's even Starship Troopers. You mentioned it early, Rob. That vibe. So I do miss that Hunter-esque, and I don't really. It felt like they took the 2012 version and they meshed his best friend in one and the same. Like it was like, all right, cool. Once we find out that it is going on, it's like his best friend took the role of all Ironside's role and going to hunt him afterwards. And I honestly, now I think about it, that's kind of cool because I wish they would have kept his. But then again, let's be real. You mentioned Arnold Schwarzenegger's best friend in the first one. I don't think he was the most um athletic to chase him down half the dang time. He was a big guy, so
you're never gonna recast Michael Ironside.
no.
You can go down the list right now. There is not an actor alive right now that you could drop in a Michael Ironside role and go, hey, we need you to be Michael Ironside. And they'll go, I got it. Don't you worry. I got it. Just wait. There's not an actor on the planet.
Him and Sean Bean, roles are made for them.
I was going to say, I take that back. Bill Hader. Bill Hader is probably the only person who could do a proper Michael Ironside. That's about it.
Okay. Right on. Oh, man. So we have the pacing here coming into it. I have to ask this. So in regards to the world, what we have here, Rob, I'm going to reflect this at you. Do you prefer the space travel world or more of the eccentric, centered to herself traveling through the core world? There's a preference? Do you have opinion?
I think doing it within the Earth makes it a more cohesive story. It allows you to trim a lot of that gristle and fat that distracted audiences and get you down to the meat and potatoes that we actually want to hear and see. And it
Okay.
makes it so much simpler. And it also allows you to play on this allegory towards like your Elysium movies, your you're just this social hierarchy of the rich are in this beautiful place and the poor just have to work to run for the rich, and just this battle between the two. I thought it was great. I thought the special effects were great. The way it was used was great. I thought it was a much better idea than Mars.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like that. I like that thought process. Bill, when it comes to the world, because and I'm just going to mention this here. So when it came to supporting characters, yes, we had the 1990 version with a little bit over the top in the action, so forth as well, comedic concepts, and then we had the more smooth rendition version when it comes to 2012 version. Now, because one character comes to mind, I need to. Do you find any supporting characters that were more lively in the first Total Recall? Because to me, what comes to my mind is, I don't know if you guys remember Thumbelina. She was the tiny the tiny dancer that was in the group. That it's in 1990. And the only reason why I'm saying this is because when it's revealed the fact that this particular club that Arnold pops up and finds out that half of the resistance is here, where unfortunately, or it's sad enough, the three movie girl gets shot and killed immediately. This little tiny girl comes out with a knife and full on kills 3 officers, swings around, and the bartender throws her a machine gun, and she gets up on the top and kills like 4 more. Like, to me, I kind of wish they they had a version of her in 2012, but it's a totally different version. I mean, was there anything I would say? I'm sorry to continue on rambling, Bill. Was there anything you preferred the 1990 version compared to 2012?
Well, again, it's what you're looking for out of a film, right? If I'm looking for dark, noir, dramatic thing, the 90 Total Recall ain't it,
Nah.
right? It's not that. You're going to have a fun time. And you're kind of long through, like, you're asking about supporting characters. Quado, man. I mean, really,
I didn't want to say that.
I'm sitting there watching this film originally. I remember my first thought was, man, I haven't watched Basket Case in a while, because that's the same kind of shit that comes to mind.
Yeah.
And where again, I'm gonna grab a friend to see these two films in two very different headspaces, and I think it's good, actually, as an example point to give people that, there's nothing wrong with doing films again, because when was the last time someone bitched about the last time that Much Ado About Nothing was done, or Hamlet for the 10 billionth time within 3 years, and
Romeo and Juliet.
Guess what? The world goes on. And
Yeah.
every so often you find a new interesting way of telling the story, and there's nothing wrong with it. I love different versions of A Christmas Carol. Some of them have Muppets, other of them do not. They are different movies. This one, if I'm looking,
There's other versions that are without Muppets.
Sadly, my favorite version of Christmas Carol is the Muppets version. Period. Hard stop.
Oh no, hands down, there is no other version. That's why I said there are other versions. No, there is only one. It's with Muppets.
It's always the best way to. Sorry, terrible side thing. But anytime you want to talk about movies, is what movie your favorite movies, you replace it with a Muppets version, but there's only one human actor. Who is it that remains from the original movie? Like, is it if we're talking Blade Runner, is it Rutger Hauer is the only human and everyone else is Muppets? Or is it someone else that's equally just kind of whacked, or is it just the replicants are Muppets, or turning it around? So like in Total Recall, who would be the one human in the room, and everybody?
I'm not gonna lie, it would have been hilarious if it was Quaid's wife was the only human in the room. He was gonna be Quaid.
There you go. But anyway, back to the original. I'm gonna take people to see these for 2 different films. They both work, and as far as supporting characters, first one, because of that, it's going to be the little funny things around the edges. It's going to be the Quado. It's going to be three boob girl. It's gonna be those are the things that are like, oh, that's funny. Because come on, no one's giving any of these people, People's Choice Awards. It's just not gonna happen. Either ensemble or as the main host.
Nickelodeon's not calling anybody, giving them an orange blimp.
Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. At the same time, I also wouldn't give anybody a Razzie in this movie in it either, because that's why I give it a 3 out of 5. Yes, but it's not a bad film. It's a perfectly enjoyable film, and when you can pull out now. But if you sit down someone now and show it to them for the first time, it's a little dated. The effects are a little cheese. You'd be like, dude, we've all seen The Martian. That's not what happens in Martian atmosphere. We're all going to figure that stuff out better. But the 12 version, you want to sit down with a good serious thing and kind of going, hey, you want to see another take that's pretty cool? Let's go.
I like that.
It's the difference between the two is you've got one is a legitimate film. We have the 2012 great film. Hey, let's sit down and actually analyze this. Then you have 1990s, which is very much a hey, let's get drunk and do shots every time Arnold makes a random noise.
Right.
Dude, we're only 20 minutes in. I don't think I can play much longer.
And it's not as intense of it, but I'll give another comparison that it's not quite as dramatic of a diametrically opposed versions, but the Sylvester Stallone versus the modern version of Judge Dredd.
Yeah, that's an excellent comparison.
Very good films, two very different types of films.
100%. In fact, that was probably one of the best comparisons there, because you got a 1990 film once again to a 2010, I believe. No, 2011. The point is, it's within the same couple years, and that it's interesting you say that. I would have never thought that, because as a kid, I was obsessed with Judge Dredd. Maybe because of a lot of the toy lines that came in a little bit afterwards too, as well. But that's going to lead to me in the next question here, because you think about Judge Dredd, and Judge Dredd with all its special effects that's there, practical effects, I meant to say. I find the practical effects in 1990 surprisingly good. I mean, you come in the very beginning of the film. Yes, I do find the fact that his eyes are about to pop out. They're breathing. It's just insane. But then you think about it, and if you look up some stuff, ironically, human skin's a little elastic more than you expect sometimes. And you see these concepts, and I'm like, okay, maybe your eyes would permanently pop out now going back in. You'd have been dead by now. But to me, I was very surprised. I want to ricochet back to Rob on this one here, buddy. Special effects you're thinking about, tile concept there, going into the nose and pulling something out, going into the face, you name it.
Make them like the this face. No more. And God, do I wish they did. They don't do them like this no more. Full head prosthetics, full explosive squibs.
Dude, I felt like this had the same vibe as The Thing.
Huh?
I think this had the same vibe as The Thing, with the amount of practical.
It was during the height of that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like remember, CGI was way too expensive. They're like, no, why the hell would I spend like 10 grand trying for some artist to draw this in when I can spend like 2 grand buying explosives? So they just don't do it like this no more. And that's why it's so good. Like, as much as pulling the tracer out of Arnold's nose is stupid and ridiculous, and we know it's terrible,
but it's fun.
So cool.
It's so fun.
It's
so
funny just to see a rubber Arnold face. It just like, I was literally rewatching. I literally came back just to rewatch that scene earlier today. Just like, hold on, I need some more of this. And I'm still grown man dying laughing, going, pull it out of his nose.
Oh man, it just to me it's a lot of fun in that regard here. Bill, I wanted to ask you a question. Let's say that Hollywood does what Hollywood does, and they're like, "Hey, let's do another Total Recall." Do you see an actor the main actor that you think possibly might be good or worth it at all, or in your opinion? If not, no worries. Just kind of curious your opinion on it.
This sort of film I don't like. Like with the 90 version, the problem is for better or for worse, it was a Schwarzenegger film. It's about Schwarzenegger. It's all wrapped around Schwarzenegger. You're asked about secondary characters and stuff. I don't think about secondary characters in the 12 version because it's more of an ensemble cast. Makes sense. There's the main lead and it's following his story, but they're all kind of in this shit together. Where the other one is it's Schwarzenegger and everyone else is hanging off the side of him. So for my preference is usually and you don't want an actor that's going to pull focus. It's often the problem with unless they lean into it, Johnny Depp, Nick Cage, those sorts of movies, because they are them. they're just them, and you
Yeah.
know who they are. It's always the same. More often than not, uh, Keanu Reeves as well. However, Keanu Reeves is basically what's his name, Assassin Boy at this
Oh,
point,
John Wick. Yeah.
John Wick, and so we get he plays
Excuse
that.
me, don't forget Johnny Utah. We never forget Johnny Utah.
We don't forget Johnny Utah, but you drop him in anywhere else, you still see him. It's always him.
Yes.
So in a movie like that, like in Total Recall, I don't want to see a named character leading it up because otherwise I'm just gonna be pulled out of it. So I as long as it's someone that can carry it along with the rest of the cast and it fits into it, and the physical type matches kind of what their background or what they're currently doing is supposed to be,
Yeah.
go with it. Don't care.
I like that. Honestly,
Like,
that makes sense to me. No,
I don't like
Rob,
stunt casting. Maybe that's what I'm getting to. I don't like stunt casting.
and that makes sense because I didn't think about it. You mentioned the big names going into like Nicolas Cage and going into Keanu Reeves. Everything's built off the characters like, all right, cool. We need a storyline that focuses on that would make sense. It just depends on something that hopefully wouldn't interfere with the storyline too much, which that makes a lot of sense to me in that regard. So
the only other person I think who could have pulled off that role would have been like a Carl Urban. If you could have gotten like a young Carl Urban, and this is only or just because I've seen a lot of his other smaller work, is Nathan Fillion. Because this would have been prime Fillion right around middle of Castle, like middle end of Castle, right as the ship's about to go down. He's still got a couple of real good younger stunt acting years left on him. There's still some meat on the bone.
But not the level of meat that he's still got.
You know who I would love to see in this? Brandon Fraser.
That would have been great.
Yeah. Because to me, it seems like Brandon Fraser would be that medium you need in regards to an action star and a comedic star. Because you have the concept of Arnold, because you were bringing that everything's about him, and I think that Fraser could pull that attention, but be wholesome enough not to be like, let's go with this. And to me, it seems with Fraser's history too that he, a storyline built around him would focus not only on him but the storyline, and as you said, Bill, the cast around him too.
You know what though? I actually think that would actually probably be fabulous casting, because if you want an interesting blend of the kind of like the comedy version of the original, think by way of The Mummy, but then bringing in modern effects and kind of the modern stuff, slam it all together at high speed, put it in a microwave, and let it go.
That's right, Hollywood.
That would be a
you heard it here first.
That's it. Brendan Fraser remake of Total Recall would be awesome.
This is why Hollywood frustrates me, because in the early 2010s, you can look at a clear string of the bigger box office movies, and you clearly can look at it going, Brendan should have been in that, and then it should have followed him up with him taking on that role, and that role, and that role, and that.
Yeah, we definitely, unfortunately, like
just the Fraser dynasty, where we saw 4 or 5 years where we're like, wow, Fraser's he's just hitting this on all cylinders.
I mean, technically speaking, DeBrio, he could have had and his career's still going. So Brandon Fraser, keep going. We cheering you on, my friend.
No. Please,
so we
more Fraser.
Yeah. So I know, right? Totally. And the thing is that like now I think about it, that would make sense. But unfortunately, we won't go into that. But there were some pit stops that we knew his career could have went a little faster than previously. Once again, I hope he's recovering pretty well from what I'm seeing. Like, big fan. On that note, before we go into towards the end of this here, Rob, would you like to see any storylines or like directions there where they could go in the Recall universe if they decided not to necessarily do a remake?
Yes, absolutely. I think with our 2012, where we leave off in 2012 is the perfect point to go to Mars. This is the perfect freaking time. We've now crippled the government. We've now crippled the bureaucracy, crippled the corruption. Now, what is happening to these outposts?
It'd be interesting.
What's happening to basic shipping in and out of the planet? How is supplies happening? What's going on? What does that second wave of the revolution look like? These are the things that would be interesting, and you can make it episodic. Give it to your Warner Brothers, your Paramount Pluses. Make it an episodic series, 8 to 12 episodes. Really flesh it out.
Have either of you two played the video game Red Faction?
Yes.
Bill, have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. I haven't played it.
The only reason why I'm saying this is that Red Faction kind of takes this universe in Mars and it talks about colonies already being there and it's trying to get people into Mars, but in reality, it's talking about the shitty living conditions of people mining on Mars. And Red Faction pops up, a group of rebels, and it's basically colonies on Mars versus the oppressive government on Mars. And
Yeah.
that would be kind of cool, Rob, that you've been started. That'd be kind of cool, in my opinion, to see something in the Recall universe show that. I mean, in my opinion, now where we're at, because hypothetically speaking, that would bring 3 films together. Because Bill, you mentioned this earlier about land being the actual income in 2012. Rob, you pointed this direction. Now it's kicking my head. They kept on emphasizing the 1990 version. It was all about oxygen. Oxygen was what was being sold to people
It's
there.
oxygen in your time around. I think what could happen, and this would be a great thing, because I've seen it already happen before, is if they did a Snowpiercer. You have the Snowpiercer movie, and then you have the show. Are they around the general same concept? Yes. Do they go in completely different directions, allowing the show to go in ways that we didn't even think of? Absolutely. They could easily give me an 8 to 12 episode season on your next biggest streaming platform. We go through and we basically take the Total Recall movie, we make it our first season. We then change the ending to where, hey, we just got word from our bases on Mars. They're ready to go with the second wave. And now we're off to Mars. Second wave is us going to Mars.
That would be fascinating. 2 things. Going into Rob, evidently someone liked your comment so much that they said, wow, that producer Rob guy is a pretty cute. The Tony Sanchez was mentioned, huh?
Yes. Thank you to my wonderful.
Now, on that note,
Bill,
I want to ask you this here before we go into our socials and so forth. Coming into, oh, wow. I hate when that happens when you have a question and it just disappears. What just happened? That was just, I feel, anyway, let's go into the oh, here it is. Sorry. Whew. Wow. I apologize to my guest and audience. Anyway, that being said, we talked about the 1990 version and the 2012 version. Would you change your popcorn ratings higher or lower from what we discussed today? Are you pretty still confident on how you feel about it?
I'm still good with where it sits. Yeah, 3 and 3.5.
Excellent. Yep. Fantastic. Yeah. Rob, yourself, buddy, when it comes to our popcorn ratings, would you keep around the same or lower?
You know what?
Higher?
You know what? Bill's beard of wisdom has swayed me on the 90s. I think I'd have to go with a 3 on the 90s, and then keep the 3.5 on the 2012.
Okay. I'm gonna actually have to go up because Bill, you've also been a motivator, but I'm gonna go up to from a 3.5 to a 4 on the 1990 version and keeping it a 4 on the 2012 version. The reason being is I really didn't think about the comedic comic aspects of it, but more into it, thinking about, we're talking about the practical effects. I started liking that a whole lot more for the time being what they had. So to me, I felt like given that I was getting a little more harsh on it in reality of sitting down, not thinking the time when I see it. And so when I first originally saw it. Now, that being said, guys, we're coming towards the end of the night here. Bill, where can we catch you on social, or where can we keep you update on your socials?
You can follow me on most all socials as Bill RW and the number 3, and writing stuff from time to time on nerdbot.com.
Excellent, fantastic. Rob, how about yourself, my friend?
You can find me on Instagram at producer_Rob. I post terrible stories and review wonderful, cheesy, god-awful movies that I love. I also post random things. Armatys, like my last name. That's my Twitter handle. I post just random musings while watching TV shows and film.
Heck yeah. Well, guys, you can find me here at Nom Talk Network or on my Twitter account where I talk massive amounts of trash. That'd be Crimson Cowie. You can find me on Instagram, which is IAMCOWIE. That's I am Cowie. Mostly daily content in regards to acting, shenanigans, and so forth. And also my toy photography account, Cowie Collector. That being said, that is all the time we have today to talk about the 1990 version of Total Recall and the 2012 version of Total Recall. Thank you for all tuning in. Please continue to join us. We love having you here. Spoiled by these two wonderful gentlemen here, Bill and Rob. Always loving having you as guests here.
Love being here.
I love it. I love it. Love it. I get to talk more, and we'll probably talk your ear off after we stop the show. So Nom Watch Review and Basic Adventures are now in podcast form. You can listen to them next day on Google Podcast, Spotify, or where you get your local podcast. Please subscribe to to our YouTube and Twitch. All of our platforms are at Nom Talk Network. Tune into our next show, which will be Prey on Monday, which I'm super hyped. Oh my god! I'm gonna talk to you guys about this. So please tune in with us.
Also, Sandman also dropped. Watch it. It's amazing.
Sandman. Tonight is Prey. Sandman is tomorrow. So
I'll tell you, I blew through the first 6.5 episodes of Sandman in one sitting and didn't feel like it at all.
Oh no! Oh god, that sounds so good, so good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, witches and wizards, our friends, thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, Bill, Rob, appreciate you guys for joining us talking about Total Recall. Please join us next time, and as always, have a nomerific day.